I spent the last 7 months or so in Chad doing humanitarian aid work, mostly in refugee camps for Darfur refugees, people who'd fled the Janjaweed in 2003, 2004, and most of them have been living in Chad for 4 or 5 years now. This very unnatural, confined life causes huge levels of domestic violence, and it causes huge levels of depression and dysfunction.
I worked with 9 Sudanese refugee women who were counselors. One of the counselors spoke out quite forcefully against the hardships that women face while in the refugee environment.
We sat down, and through a translator, she gave to us this incredible feminist manifesto. She basically outlined all of the restrictions that women were suffering from in this refugee camp. And I said, well, this is amazing. I've always wanted to hear this. Can you write it down? So she got together a committee, and they wrote this document in Arabic that outlines in point form all of the grievances and problems that these women have in this refugee camp.
What they produced was something called the Farchana Manifesto. It was the voice of the women. It was only the women who produced it.
It's incredibly dangerous to speak out against the Sudanese community or against Sudanese men or against the societal strictures that they live under. For speaking out, a Sudanese woman in a refugee camp could be simply killed.
There was a group of 7 women who were Sudanese refugees who had been charged with prostitution.
These were girls from 13 to 30 years old, 2 of whom were working in a bar, others who were working as domestic servants, who were doing wall building, working with mud bricks. The men in the camp decided to make an example to restore morality. One night when they were back from the town, they rounded them all up and they bound them. And dozens of men took shifts beating them with whips and sticks. This was very public. The whole camp heard this. And the next morning when we came into the camp, our refugee staff came to us and said there was torture in the camp last night. Women were tortured.
We heard about mothers who would listen to the screams of their daughters being tortured throughout the night.
How do you beat a 13-year-old girl to within an inch of her life with clubs and whips? It's just almost beyond comprehension.
A declaration written by the women of Farchana refugee camp. We, the women of Farchana camp, have many concerns concerning deprivation of our liberties and absence of freedom of expression. Here, we relate them to you one by one. 1. We are deprived of freedom of expression. Women have no voice. Two, it is forbidden for women to better their living conditions. If a woman works, she must still see to all her responsibilities, such as caring for the sick, household management, being responsible for her children. The husband's role is non-existent. 3. There is a lack of equality between the different wives if a man has multiple wives. This is an injustice. 4. Women cannot freely decide how to manage their own property, such as money, gold, domestic objects, and cattle. 5. There are restrictions on external communications, for example, visiting neighbors, family, friends, and especially long-distance travel. If a woman is allowed to travel long distances, she will not receive any money and will have to make do. 6. Lack or refusal of access to higher education, such as university, for women. 7. Girls are discouraged from attending school.
يعني دوري كي كنت شيلين الحرية بالكامل كلا يعني نكون أسكت عشان لا عشان العيون كلها دوري مرتاح.
8. When a girl becomes pregnant, her mother must take responsibility and is held accountable. This can bring negative reactions from her husband and lead to divorce. 9. Hard labor is done by women, carrying firewood, collecting grass for cattle, water transportation, shelter construction. All physically grueling work is the responsibility of women. 10. There is a lack of trust in women. A woman cannot leave her home without her husband's approval or knowledge. Otherwise, she will immediately be accused of having left in order to prostitute herself.
كنيت في البيت كمان انت بس خلطانه المرأة دي كنت انت بس فتشتي للراجل.
11. A woman has no value except for sexual pleasure. Men want to have many children, but do not think of their future. 12. Forced weddings and child weddings are encouraged.
كمان هن كان علمت لحد الساعة 1:05 لحد خلاص ياخذ الزواج بعد ما تقدر تلحق يعني تعليم العالي ما تقدر تمشي فوق البيت ورا يرجعوها والبيت خلاص تقعد شنو هي ما عندها أي عمل هي ما عندها أي عمل. 13. Even during aid agency meetings, women's voices are not being taken seriously. Only the men are being heard. حتى في الاجتماعات برضه هتيجي خاصة في المنظمات العامة فأنا هم يعني المنظمات ما يهتموا بكلام المرأة يهتموا بكلام الراجل بس كتير.
14. Women have no recourse for their grievances and preoccupations. The space or organization that will take into account their concerns does not exist.
It does not seem likely that they're going to be able to return to their homes anytime soon. It certainly doesn't seem likely that they're going to be integrated into the Chadian population and allowed to farm or to work or to have full citizenship rights within that country. They're in this provisional life with no hope in it.
كيف عايشين بأبنائكم وكيف متقاعدين عايشين ده بس تقريبا الحرية بالكامل انت ذات يعني تفكروا لنا معنا كلام قاعدين تعبانين نشوفوا لنا حلول من اتجاهات.
She's not asking for us to intervene and change the way Sudanese society works.
مثل الأمهات هناك في السودان هم يعني هم كلهم مرتاحين لكن عندما الحرية لكن هنا في المعسكرات ده علينا ما عندنا حرية خاصة في معسكر فرشانة.
What she's asking for is for the consequences of being in the refugee camp to not destroy the freedoms that the women had.
We thank you and hope that women's liberties and worth will become an important matter in this world. On this day, Tuesday, June the 10th, 2008,